the past few programs, we've been looking at Revelation chapter 17. Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. She is seen riding a beast, a scarlet-colored beast, with the mouth of a lion, the feet of a bear, and the beast itself looks like a leopard. Gary Stearman is here to discuss with me this last form of Gentile world power.
And the last form is simply an outgrowth of all the evil that has come down through the ages of man. JR, and the interesting thing about the leopard, as we discussed last broadcast, was that the leopard priesthood began with Nimrod back in the days of the founding of Babylon, and it has continued on a very secret basis, sort of behind the scenes, under the radar, if you will, right down to the present day and then into the future. And that evil system of worship, as we mentioned on the last broadcast, is typified by Apollo, son of Zeus, and by Artemis, or Diana, daughter of Zeus. They form a pair of twins, if you will. Apollo, the god of destruction, Artemis, the goddess of fertility. JR, they are the foundation of pagan religion.
And I would think even unto this very day.
Yes.
There are a number of mystery religions. They are all one and the same religion, though they may call themselves by different names. There's the various Grail societies, Hinduism, Buddhism, polytheism of sorts, the idea of transcendental meditation, witchcraft, seances, mind control, ESP, out-of-the-body experiences. All of these things are a part of the mystery religion, and those who are members of it are initiates. They work their way through levels of initiations.
And to bring us up completely up to date, in Revelation chapter 9, verse 11, the king of the hordes of the bottomless pit is called Apollyon. Now, Apollyon is just simply the Greek name for Apollo. And we take it that Apollo was one of the original fallen angels mentioned in Genesis chapter 6. He's been imprisoned in the bottomless pit, which is then opened in Revelation 9. And JR, the horror of this, unspeakable horror, is that when this bottomless pit is opened, in fact, in Revelation 9, the fifth angel sounds, verse 2, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as smoke of a great furnace. In the Greek, this bottomless pit is called the well shaft of the abyss. And you get this graphic picture of opening a door, and you can see maybe thousands of feet down into Hades. And at a particular time, Hades is opened, and these demonic spirits come out to plague mankind. In fact, it says, J.R., power was given over them to kill men.
And in fact, they kill a third of men. The four angels loosed out of the river Euphrates are a part of all of this. It's interesting that it centers upon the Euphrates River,
yes,
ancient Babylon. In fact, in verse 8 says, the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And Gary, when we look at chapter 13, the beast that rises up out of the sea of nations is this same beast that here it says rises up out of the bottomless pit. So basically we're referring to the same entity here.
We seem to be.
It seems to be correlated or brought about into power and authority from a sea of nations. I would liken perhaps the United Nations being a good candidate there. But the spiritual entity behind it comes up out of the bottomless pit.
And JR, there's every indication in Scripture that the man we call Antichrist, who is also referred to as the son of perdition, is indwelt somehow by the spirit of Apollo, if you will. This evil, dark spirit, because he is called the son of perdition. Perdition in the Greek, or the phrase son of perdition, huios apollaia, which means son of, if you will, Apollo, meaning that he has some connection with the spirit of Apollo. And J.R. just read that the beast will come up out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. So apparently this ancient spirit of the fallen angel, Apollo, somehow indwells the Antichrist.
Now in chapter 12 we have the great red dragon and his fallen angels being cast out of heaven to the earth. Cast from that other dimension into this dimension. They are bound now upon the earth. They walk in the sight of men. They look like a mighty army. They have their concentration in ancient Babylon on the Euphrates River, 50 miles south of Baghdad in Iraq. And then not only do we have this beast being coming down, the dragon coming down, but we also have the beast that kills the two witnesses. He is the beast out of the bottomless pit. So we're talking about this same world government here, headed up by the United Nations, and this entity, this new world order, this world empire that's coming, with its 7 heads and 10 horns, is right from the pit itself.
J.R., we should take a moment here to introduce a subject that we have spoken of before in other contexts, and that is the subject of the contemporary UFO mythology, which we believe to be founded on the Prince of the Power of the Air, as he is called, the one who believes that he has control over the atmospheric heavens. He sails about by night, strange lights in the sky. His minions are said to abduct human beings. They are said to torment and to trouble human beings. And J.R., there's a prophecy about Babylon back here in Zechariah chapter 5, in which the prophet is shown an ephah, which is a basket, like a woven basket. Curiously, it has a round disc-shaped lid on it made of lead. And the angel tells Zechariah to look down into this ephah, and he says in verse 9, I lifted up my eyes and I looked, and behold, there came out 2 women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had the wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heaven. And so he asks a question, where are they going? The angel says, to build it an house in the land of Shinar. It shall be established and set there upon her own base. And you know, what was in the ephah, J.R., was a woman.
Mystery Babylon.
Mystery Babylon the Great. And this lid was placed on the basket, and 2 strange women flew away with this basket, and they've set it on its base in Babylon. Now, to me, this is a direct reference to the UFO mythology. If you saw that ephah flying over, doubtless it would take the form in your eyes of a UFO.
And Gary, you remember when these locust-like creatures come out of the bottomless pit and torment men for 5 months? The Bible tells us that the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And you slip right on down here to verse 16. It says, and the number of the army of the horsemen were 200 million, 200,000, which says to me that these demons, these demonic-like creatures, or these aliens from the bottomless pit, are going to actually be 200 million in number. And that's a lot of demons. That means that fallen angels are going to be walking the earth in the sight of men during this time, after the rapture of the church.
And they have the power to kill men, which is a thought that it beggars the imagination. I can't even imagine, except, J.R., think about all the strange movies that have been made lately about demons and strange powers being released on the surface of the earth and plaguing mankind and killing people as they will. You know, it's as though Hollywood is foreshadowing that which is to come.
It's going to be really a strange time, because the devil himself will be walking among men. He will give power to this world entity, this beast that rises up out of the sea of nations and / bottomless pit. And he's going to establish a world government. In fact, in chapter 17 here, there are 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, Gary, we have noted in the past that the 7 heads appear to be historically the world governments down through history.
Yes.
With the 7th one being the kingdom of the beast, or the Antichrist. And I would say that the United Nations here is a mighty good candidate for this.
Absolutely. And one individual will rise to power out of this, if you will, sea of nations, and at last come to be head of it. And J.R., the Bible is very clear. It says that the one who rises to power does so by defeating others, and he is demonically empowered. He has the power to do miracles.
Yes. And remember, please, it says in verse 9, here is the mind which hath wisdom, the 7 heads or 7 mountains, and so on. Now, the discussion is decidedly reserved for the mind which hath wisdom. It's a subject so far removed from the normal process of discussion that a divine wisdom is needed to understand it. So we have these incredible things occurring. And we're going to talk about these 7 heads and 10 horns when we come back in just a moment. The 7th beast, or world government, has 7 heads and 10 horns. First, let's look at the 7 heads. Dr. E.W. Bullinger lays out an important note, which I think has often been overlooked. He says that the angel tells John of the 7 kings from the vantage point of the day of the Lord, not from the 1st century. If that be so, he says, these 7 mountains, which represents kingdoms and kings, that have fallen are 1, Babylon, 2, Medo-Persia, 3, Greece, 4, Rome, and 5 is the Mohammedan, he says, which we would call the Ottoman Empire that ruled over Jerusalem for 500 years. And then beyond that, he suggests a 6th kingdom, the one that is, would restore the Jews to their homeland. Gary, that would be the British, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, and so the British would bring up the last of the list. And J.R., he wrote this back at the turn of the 20th century, just about 104 or 5 years ago. Yeah. Amazingly prescient.
Yeah, you know, he could not see the British Empire under the British mandate controlling the Holy Land. But he said that whatever country or whatever kingdom that was coming would let the Jews go back home. And then he said the 7th one, the other that is not yet come, could be the kingdom of the beast. Well, we know that that 7th entity is the United Nations. He goes on to say that that is the beast, the head that is wounded unto death. That is, to me, the UN is nothing more than a debating society today.
So basically, Bullinger espoused what we might call the political view of the 7 heads. But there is another view. There's a historical view, looking back through history in a different way.
Yes. Just before getting to that, let me just mention to you that this 7th head, which may be a debating society today, sort of dead in the water, so to speak, is going to receive power, some kind of a world catastrophe. Maybe these demons that come down and kill 1/3 of men, 200 million of them, gathering over in the Middle East around Babylon, taking over Iraq, the country of Iraq, setting up some kind of base of operations there, some kind of, maybe a bunch of UFOs come down. I don't know exactly how bizarre it's going to be, but it's going to cause this 7th kingdom to coalesce into a world body.
Absolutely.
And they're going to fight against this Babylon and destroy it. That's the way I see it. The world government is going to destroy Mystery Babylon.
Yeah, and just a quick word to those who might be thinking, well, J.R. and Gary are getting pretty far out right now. What we're doing is taking a literal reading of the book of Revelation, incorporating metaphor and symbol where appropriate, and integrating what we know to be true about the kingdom of Satan. And you put it all together, J.R., it's bizarre, to say the least.
Yes. Now, this historical view. Joseph Seiss in the last century said that this harkens all the way back to Nimrod. He says, quote, we have seen that she began with Nimrod, bears the name of Babylon, and is not destroyed until the day of judgment. The 7 imperial mountains on which she rides, therefore, must fill up the whole interval. The reference here is to kings, mountains of temporal dominion, and so on. 5 are fallen, passed away. 1 is... that is the one standing at that moment in sway of power. The other is not yet come. When he comes, he must continue a little season. And so he says, Rome is the one that is. So he doesn't take the view of Bullinger that, that the angel is talking in the days of the day of the Lord, but from the 1st century. And so he says, there was Rome, preceding Rome was Greece, then Persia, and Babylon, and Assyria, and Egypt, no more, no less. And to prove his point, he says you can send archaeologists to all of these places and find the ruins of these great empires. Fascinating.
And then, of course, Seiss was looking for the empire of the Antichrist to be the concluding one, and by the way, so are we.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to put your finger on that empire, except to say that it is going to arise out of a global political economic structure. Probably the best model for that right now is the United Nations, which brings us to the subject of the 10 horns.
And it appears that they are 10 political economic regions of the whole world. Now, just a few years ago, Europe was the favorite. Europe is going to be Mystery Babylon. Europe is going to be the beast. Wait a minute, folks. Europe cannot be both. See, that's the problem area right there with Europe. So I think Europe's not going to have 10 nations and become the Mystery Babylon and become the beast with 10 horns. I think it's going to be the United Nations, and as it takes over the whole world, divides up the world into 10 economic political regions. In 1974, the Club of Rome issued a paper in which they suggested that the world be divided up into 10 kingdoms, which later became known as political economic regions. And this became the goal of the United Nations from that day till this. So we've got the makings today of the possibility that soon all we have to now do is to get out of here. All the Christians have to leave, and then the devil is going to come down. There'll be chaos for the first 3.5 years. Then there's going to be some kind of a UFO invasion of the planet, and from there the UN will take over. The Antichrist will build. Cause people to worship the beast, the mark in the hand of the forehead. I guess that's to tell who's demons and who's not.
Well, J.R., we've been talking about Europe, and we talked about Europa, the woman riding the bull, Zeus. We talked about the European Parliament building having as its symbol the Tower of Babel. And we talk about Europe having all the trappings of this pagan religious system. J.R., wouldn't it be so that if the church were taken out of the world, that system would outgrow Europe in a hurry? It would cover the whole world because there would be nothing to stop it. In other words, what is lodged in Europe today could easily become global in nature if the church were gone.
That's true, absolutely. Furthermore, these demons might look like humans. You know?
Yes.
People may need the mark of the beast to be able to tell who's human and who's not.
And by the way, there's scriptural ground for that, because if you go back to the prophet Daniel, Daniel speaks of a statue with a head of gold, feet of iron and clay, and in Daniel 2:43, whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of man, but they shall not cleave one to another. In other words, this mysterious they, this external force, in those future days will attempt apparently to intermingle their seed with the seed of men, that is, interbreed, and it won't work.
Amazing.
It is.
So we have here in Revelation chapter 17, Mystery Babylon, who is destroyed by the 10 heads. That is the world government, the beast, and the Antichrist and his 10 underlings. The 10 rulers that rule under him over the whole world. They will hate the woman, and they will burn her with fire. They will destroy her. It sounds like the movie The 4th of July, you know.
Yeah, Independence Day.
Yeah, or Stargate.
Stargate.
All those ghouls.
J.R., it strikes me that science fiction today is simply mythological foreshadowing of what the book of Revelation has said for thousands of years. The question of the burning of Babylon, we posed this, we have posed it a couple of times. If Mystery Babylon the Great is a system, that is some kind of a power structure behind the throne, not really a physical city, how are you going to burn Mystery Babylon? Yet clearly Revelation 17, 15 through 18 says Babylon's going to be burned. J.R., how shall we approach this?
I don't know. But if it's Babylon on the Euphrates, I could see that whole sandlot being turned to glass.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, there are a couple of things we have not touched on here, Gary, that we need to. Let's take the Hebrew letter Peh, for example. That's the 17th letter, and it fits Mystery Babylon. If you recall, back originally, Babylon means confusion. Babel means confusion because of the change of the language. And here we've got the Peh, which stands for the mouth. So it fits Babylon perfectly here.
It does, the mouth being the organ of proclamation, declaration. And by the way, this is the final declaration of the mystery of the woman. It fits perfectly.
Yeah, and one more thing, John's Gospel chapter 17 fits Revelation chapter 17 because in John's Gospel, Jesus talks about Judas Iscariot as the son of perdition. And in chapter 17 of Revelation, this seventh beast goes into perdition. So we've got it all right there. It's an amazing study, this chapter 17, but it's not over. Chapter 18 is just ahead. We'll be back in just a moment. Chapter 17 of Revelation, a fascinating study in the identity of the woman and the beast. Gary?
Absolutely, and as we watch world events today, we are seeing the great city, which we believe to be global in nature, is rapidly spreading in power and in all directions. So keep your eyes on the United Nations, things happening there.
Yeah. Now, I want to tell you very quickly about the book, In Their Own Words, the personal testimonies of some 50 men and women of faith. And it has some of the great names in there of Bill Bright of Campus Crusade for Christ, Chuck Colson, James Dobson, Elizabeth Elliot, Adrian Rogers, many other names in here. I'm in chapter 5, and I'd like to send it to you as a way of saying thank you for your support of this program. It's $12.95 plus shipping and handling. Call today. Well, yeah, this is J.R. Church and Gary Stearman. Until next time, keep looking up.
Prophecy in the News is a viewer-supported ministry sponsored by our many friends across America and in your area. For your gift of $10, you can receive a special edition of our current program on audio tape, or for a gift of $20, we'll send you our programs on videotape. For either order, call the 800 number on your screen right now.